Welcome. If you followed any of my videos, which there's a good chance you haven't, about 2 years ago, I showed an unboxing video of a mile marker Maverick 5 winch, a 5,000 pound winch that I plan to put on this Wolverine, a 2020 Yamaha Wolverine X4. And the 2020 models came with a reinforced area and a winch plate already in, welded to the bumper, so it made it fairly easy to install a winch. You didn't need an additional adapter bracket. Well, here we are 2 years later, and as you can tell, the winch still is not installed. It's actually in a box over here in the shop behind me. What we're going to do today, probably in the last video that was posted most recent to this one, I unboxed a worn bumper. Those bumpers, you can't find much information on them on the internet. I couldn't. Just a few people asking about them, and they retail MSRP was around $555. So $555. But right now, today's October 29th, 2022. It's bad that I had to think about that. So yeah, October 29th, 2022. I just bought this from Warren, direct from Warren's website for $220 plus taxes. It's the best price I could find. If you're interested in one, maybe you should go get one. It's labeled to or advertised to fit the 2018 to 2020 models. I don't see why, if that's true, I don't see why it wouldn't fit the 21 and 22 models as well. Yamaha did change the bumpers in 2020, as I said, to make it stronger for mounting a winch. So there's been some question as to whether or not this bumper will even fit a 2020 model. But we're going to try to fit it on here and see how it goes. And if you did watch the unboxing video, I've said it plenty of times already, there are no instructions included with the worn bumper. So it's going to be kind of like Legos, again, without the instructions. And even Legos come with instructions. So follow along, and we're going to figure out how to put this bumper on. I'm going to start. I've got a selection of tools. If you've done any work on a Wolverine or really anything that's imported, you know that a 10 millimeter wrench and socket are going to be needed. So I've got a selection of 10 millimeters, and the Yamaha on the Wolverine also likes the 14 millimeters. So I've got 10 millimeter, 14 millimeter, a flathead screwdriver to take off the plastic inserts for this I guess you call it a bash plate, but don't bash it much. It's made out of plastic. And so let's get started. Okay, maybe you've taken this plastic plate off before. I obviously said we have plastic inserts. That's not the case. These guys look like Torx bits. So let me get a Torx bit, which I should have behind me, and get these off. So these look to be T30s. See if we can't get those off in a timely manner, and see how much dirt falls out from under it when we do this as well. Having said that, let's move our tools out. Oh yes, and the reason we only took 3 out is because my Wolverine did not come with the 4th bolt. There was one missing when I bought it. Next up, I'm going to try to take these out. I believe these are 14 millimeters. Next, there are 2, or you can do it in any order, I guess, but there are 2 10 millimeter bolts that hold the front headlight cover to the bumper. We'll take those off. And I think the last 2 bolts needed for the factory bumper are 2 14 millimeters, and there's 2 upper support bars that go straight back, and they attach it to the frame. You can't get there. There are some covers here. You can take these covers off. I've also found that a ratcheting wrench will fit just enough in here to get them. And there we have the factory bumper. Getting that factory bumper off wasn't too bad. I'm sure instructions would make this easier, but it doesn't look too confusing. If you saw the unboxing video, There are two bracing brackets. I call them support brackets. I don't know where they go. We'll try to figure out where they go while we're installing it. I'm gonna get a rag real quick, clean up some of these mounting surfaces, and start piecing this thing together. Looking at this side cover now, it looks like just two 10mm bolts will get that off. I'm going to take that off instead of trying to fight around it. I should have done that before we took the bumper off. That would have made taking the factory bumper off a lot easier as well. It felt like it had another bolt. There's actually just a piece of double-sided foam, like tape there. Let's get that out of the way. I'm going to do the other one. And then that gives us a lot easier access to that mounting point. The main piece that attaches the worn bumper to the frame and has the attachment points for D-rings has to go up top here. These two bolts are the only 14mm in the worn kit. They have to go up here to bolt this guy. In addition to these to the main mount, go together, and the bolts can go through both of those. Except the holes in these guys are too small. All right, let's bolt this guy on. I'm going to leave those a little loose. We'll snug them up later. I may have found one problem with bolting this on the 2020. Let's see. We've got the metal bash plate. Again, the pictures I've seen showed the factory plate being over it. The concern is, I believe these two bolts are supposed to go in these two holes where the factory 18 and 19 bumper went. But there's no cutout in that plate to fit around the factory 2020 bumper mounting point. So it looks like I'll be modifying the worn bumper because I'm not going to cut that off my frame. I want to keep that in case I do, for any reason, decide to go back to the factory bumper. So I need to notch out. I'm going to have to cut a notch out of this bumper or this bash plate to fit around the 2020 mounting tab. It's a bit of a disappointment. You like to have things go quickly or go easily, but I've found few things go easy. Easy way to hard way, Rains. Easy way to hard way. Gone in 60 seconds. So I'm going to give you a closer look at what I'm talking about. On the 2020 up frames, you have this mounting tab here, in addition to the two holes for the original, for the bumper on the 18 and 19 models. The problem is, let me see if I can get this plate. If you put this plate in and you try to get it to line up them holes, it's not going to do it. That tab's in the way. I've got my lines marked there for the relief cuts. I've got my score marks here for where my bends are going to be. I'm going to cut to this upper mark and start bending at the lower mark. So since I won't be returning this after cutting it, I've been modified the product. I figure I'll go ahead and use the worn box as my base. Sure, I know that's not a genius move, sitting here with sparks, cutting metal on top of cardboard. If it does catch fire, I'll kick it out in the yard. Try to miss my dog who just walked up. Okay, so off camera, I went ahead and broke that tab off drilled a hole in it and made it into a slot. So it's like two holes close together, ground down the center. Made it a elongated hole, give me a little bit of adjustment. And now I've cut two triangle pieces of metal that I'm going to use to reinforce that tab and give us 3 mounting points for that lower skid plate or bash plate. So I'm gonna go ahead and weld that up off camera and we'll show you the finished product. Okay, so that bash plate's finished. If you wanted to make it fit a 20, 20 and up, you could just cut that notch out in the plate and it would fit right around that tab. It'd fit right around that center tab here, and you just bolt it in using the two holes. I ended up finishing up welding in that bracket tab. Flip it over. So I put a tab there and put some triangles on the side to reinforce it. And as you can see, put way too much paint on it one time, but that's okay. It's on the back side. We won't see that. And I did touch up the front as well. Okay, I found out where these brackets go. They bend to the right outside there. The top part does go up where that main mount attaches to that bolt, and the bottom comes down in the hole, the outer holes of your bash plates. But as I mentioned early in the video, these holes on the ends do not fit the 14 millimeter bolts. They barely do. Maybe they did before the powder coating was put on, but they're not the same size as the holes in this upper winch mount or upper bumper mount. So I'm going to drill these guys out one size larger so that they'll easily fit. So the drill bit I went with was a 7/16. That'll give us plenty of room for those 14 millimeter bolts to go through. Now we've got this bash plate down below kind of loose. We've got these reinforcement bars in. Although if you look, that one doesn't look quite like it fits as good as this side. It is rather interesting. While that side doesn't look like it fits as well as this side. So the next piece is the bumper. Goes over both of these. And this time we use the bolts included with the Warren kit. I've got three bolts, 3 washers, and 3 nylon lock nuts. Bolt to go in the bottom of the bumper through the bash plate and through these arms. And then we'll put nylon lock nut on top. I guess I could. Let's do this. Let's take some of these extra bolts. Just drop them through the holes where the winch would mount to keep that in line. That way I don't have to worry about it keep falling out. The question is, I'm really concerned about how it will work in a sideways pull. Because those mountain tabs, as we showed earlier, aren't the best location. But since the bumper is tied into this bash plate, which is bolted to the frame, that whole assembly would be trying to shift. And I believe it's going to work out pretty good. One thing I noticed, I mentioned earlier, those bars seem to be looser than the other, tighter. You can tell there, look at the gap here, which looks like where it should be. And then the gap on the driver's side, bumpers is pretty much touching the plastic there. Okay, so I found out why the bumper was, the clearance was tighter on one side than the other. These are the two arms. If you see, I've got them even there. When you get to the top, look at that. There's a bit of a difference there, isn't there? Probably using a longer washer is going to be the better option. Maybe. That's why they gave us so many washers. That'd be like fender shims. And I did check with Warren. Warren emailed me back and they said they knew this bar was shorter than the other side, and kind of suggested I just stack some washers underneath it. So it's 4 washers, but what I've done, got a nut, drilled it out, and I'm gonna use that as a larger spacer. All right, well, we ran a bit of a rabbit trail talking about that. Let's keep going here. Okay, let's wrap this up. I'd also bought another one of the bolts that goes on the bottom and holds the plastic skid plate in, if you want to call it a skid plate, that guard. Yamaha part number is here. Let's see if I can get that into focus. 90109-068A5. This is the nut I drilled out, and I just took you can still see some of the threads in there, but I took a drill bit just slightly larger than the hole. I can't remember what size the bit was, and just drilled it out. I'm going to use this as a spacer. It's only needed on the driver's side. Warren did say they're going to fix the issue. They're going to have another bar created, but suggested for now that I use just stack some washers together. I'd rather not use washers, so I'm using just a nut. Okay, there it is. If you don't have a winch, or you're not going to run a winch, that's how your bumper will look. If you don't put any lights or mount anything else on it, it's a pretty good looking bumper. You may have seen me shaking on it earlier in the video. I was trying to see how strong it was. Feels pretty strong. I think it'll do okay in a side load. My only ask that I could have asked for would have been an instruction manual, which didn't get one of those with the email as well, so I'm assuming there's no such thing. I wish that bracket on the driver's side had been the same side as the passenger, and where it bolts to the frame, it's almost more or less bolting to the radiator support for that upper bracket, and that's where a lot of your pulling strength or stresses are going to go. But some of it should transfer through the bash plate down to the lower frame as well. Probably not too terribly much though. But anyway, thanks for watching. I think we'll end it here. I know I'm going to install a winch on there, and I'll probably do that in a separate video. If I do that, I'll link it somewhere on the screen here. But as always, guys, I truly appreciate you watching. Hope this helped you out in some way. If you have any questions, comment below, and I'll do what I can to answer those questions. Again, this is the Warren winch bumper, or the Warren bumper, for the 2018 to 2019 Yamaha Wolverine. This is the X2 and X4, the 850 models. It will fit the 2020 and up if you cut that lower bash plate. So thanks for watching, guys. Bye. What? You mean there's bonus footage? Well, in shipment, this bumper got shifted around, and there's a couple of ding marks. So I'll tell you, this stuff right here matches Yamaha's textured coating very well. It's the Rust-Oleum truck bed coating in black. It matches the factory roll bar cage, whatever term you want to use there. The textured finish on it is very close to Yamaha's. The color's close as well. So that's what I'm going to do. I've kind of just laid cardboard out here protecting the grill of the Wolverine. I don't want to paint the whole bumper. So we're just going to use it to touch up here a little bit. That ran. So I'm going to wipe that off a little bit. Always nice to have a little texture in there from your rags. And so it was dinged a little bit on this side, and then I think you could see that up there. And again, you don't have to weld that tab on there if you want to. I've just cut the metal out. It's about a 2-inch by 1 3/4 inch square or rectangle. You could do a 2-inch by 2-inch if you want to. Just leave a bit of a gap down there. If you don't have anything to cut it with, you can go to Harbor Freight, buy you a $10 angle grinder. It might be $12 or $13 now. It's gone up a little bit in the past year or two, and get you a pack of $5 or $7 cut-off disc and go for it. One disc should be all you need. You can see how that frame, if you didn't want to run this plastic piece, the factory plastic cover, and you wanted to just use a metal plate as a skid plate underneath there to protect your differential, you'd have this blunt edge hanging down by about 1.5 to 2 inches to catch everything. It'd have been nice if this upper plate or this bash plate had come down underneath and bolted up underneath. That would have been really nice. Maybe I'm being picky, but I think that would have been ideal. I did not put the light mount, the LED light bar mounting bracket in the back. When I get a LED light, I'll mount it first if it'll fit on this bracket, or if I have to modify the bracket or use some other brackets. But the goal is to hopefully use this bracket and then mount the light to the bracket and then put the entire assembly in the back and come up and bolt it through these holes here in the front, like so, and then have the light there. If I had the bracket already in there, if the bracket was already in there, I'd be working by feel to try to bolt the light or attach the light to it. So I'm going to leave this off until I'm ready to use it. One thing I noticed on the 18 and 19s, the way the front bumper bolts on to the Wolverine chassis, they just bolt straight on up here. On the 2020, they bolt into these holes and the third hole here. But I think that's the reinforcement in addition to the mounting plate already there that bolts, that helps strengthen the front of the Wolverine for a winch. My concerns are the main piece that attaches the worn bumper to the frame and has the attachment points for D-rings has to go up top here. So it's going to look great. The problem is the attachment points where it bolts up to the frame, those are not really that strong. Down here would be the best place to pull on these main frame rails. That's the strongest part of that frame is down low. The attachment points for that worn bumper are about 3 or 4 inches above these tubes into what really is kind of like the radiator support. It's not really a structural part of the frame. So that kind of concerns me. Am I going to decide not to install the bumper? No, I'm still going to put it on. It's just something you might want to keep in mind. I'll bring you up close and show you what I'm trying to talk, or at least try to show you what I'm talking about. So if you see here, obviously these frame rails here are nice and beefy. I think those are what, 1 by 1.5, maybe 1 by 2 inch channel or tubing. This is 1 inch by 1 inch tubing, and that down here is where the factory bumper bolts using these 3 holes. The top rails go, let me see if I can turn a light on for you, go into these holes right here. And that's about 4 inches above this frame rail. If you look on the inside, let's go to the bottom frame rail. You see that frame rail goes back. It's going to go way back, almost the length of the vehicle, back to the rear end. These next frame rails, let me zoom out here a little bit so I can see. These next frame rails, they're smaller tubes, 1 inch tubes. You can see there they go right there between the A-arms. and they go on back as well until you get to a part of the chassis that goes down. Now, if we look at these tubes here, or these mounting tabs here, where the Warren bumper is going to mount, and you come around on the back side, let's see if we can see. There's nothing there. Let's see if we can move on around. We can't see the mounting point in here, but really it's in front of that radiator. So there's nothing, I mean, clearly, if this is where they mount, and you come back here, if this is where they mount up here, there's no frame rail back here. It is just a tab. So let's look at it another way. If that's the tab where our main attachment for the Warren bumper goes, you can see that 1-inch tube it's bolted to, or welded to. That tube comes up, there it is on the inside of the grill. It's part of your radiator support. So you're putting most of your leverage for a winch pull up here, which is about 4 inches. Well, it's about 2 inches above where it's welded to that cross member there. That's just, it's going to be a lot of stress.